Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Dynamics 365 Finance Automation and AI, Faster Close Without More Headcount. I'm Colin Schofield, a Finance Acceleration Associate here at Avantiico. Today's session is focused on how finance teams can reduce manual work, accelerate close cycles, and improve forecasting accuracy using the automation and AI capabilities built directly into D365 Finance. Whether you're already live on D365 Finance or still evaluating the platform, we'll show how to drive more value from the tools you already own or are considering without adding operational complexity. You'll see how D365 Finance supports automation through standard functionality, and most importantly, how emerging AI agent functionality through MCP can enhance control and visibility across your daily operations. We've got a great session ahead with real-world insights, a live walkthrough, and time for a Q&A with our featured presenter, D365 Finance Consultant and Director of Business Application Consulting, Brandon Nash. Before we dive in, though, here's a quick look at a few of our upcoming events. First, join us next week on February 24th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time for AMCS Lite. Multi-company accounting shouldn't be manual. In this webinar, we'll show how AMCS Lite simplifies multi-company journal processing inside D365 Finance, eliminating manual multi-company accounting work, reducing close risk, and giving finance teams greater control and confidence in their numbers. It's a 100% free solution built and supported by Avantiico. If multi-entity complexity is slowing you down, this is one you don't want to miss. Then on March 12th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, join us in person at the Microsoft Innovation Hub in Irvine, California for Dynamics Day, the future of finance and supply chain management. Dynamics Day brings together finance, supply chain, IT, and operations leaders to explore how teams are modernizing finance and operations with Microsoft solutions. At this session, you'll get practical, real-world guidance on multi-entity accounting, freight and billing automation, third-party integrations, implementation strategy, post-go-live optimization, plus how AI, Copilot, and Microsoft Fabric are shaping modern finance and operations teams. Space is limited and we are close to selling out, so register as soon as possible to reserve your seat. Lastly, on March 17th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, join us online for the next session in our ongoing D365 FNSEM 1 version update series that will be covering the upcoming 10.0.47 release. We'll walk through the most impactful 0.47 finance and supply chain updates, see them in action, and discuss roadmap planning strategies for 2026, including how to reduce operational risk, minimize downtime, and avoid disruption during peak season updates. And as always, please feel free to drop your questions into the chat throughout this session. We'll answer them as we go or during the Q&A at the end. And with that, Brandon, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Colin. I appreciate it. And welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and wherever you may be. So like Colin said, we're going to talk about D365 Finance Automation and AI and basically go through the journey of where we are and where we're going in terms of using D365 Finance and the automation tools and the agentic AI capabilities that are currently in your system that you can leverage today. And so this is the agenda that we'll try to stick with. And of course, like Colin said, as questions come up, if we go off tangent, that's okay too, because, I do always prefer a more interactive session more than anything. But more than anything, right now, we're going to talk about being able to increase risk or increase return on investment and reduce risk, go through some of the D365 standard finance automation functions, how Microsoft is leveraging or connecting agentic AI and D365 Finance together. And then, of course, we'll do a quick demonstration of the model context protocol and how all those different things in terms of agentic AI, Copilot, and D365 Finance automation is all coming together, and the steps that you can take in your journey to adopt some of these functionalities within the next year and into the future. So let's talk about what we need to do in order to reduce risk and increase ROI with our investments into agentic AI. So I just want to set up a scenario for you to think about and to put yourselves in a position where maybe you've experienced this before or you have similar situations that could occur. So we want to talk about how have we moved from doing things manually, taking manual steps, to then conceptually thinking about how we can do those things better, and then being able to actually put those concepts into actual practice so that we can now actually automate our business processes on a daily basis. And the scenario I want you to think about is a company that takes 6 to 8 months to put their budget plan together. For example, where they have, as you can see in the graphic here on the left, they need to be able to gather and collate and combine multiple sources of information and data across various servers and people, and have multiple levels of departmental approval before their finance team can actually look at those budget numbers, make decisions around those budgets, finalize them, and then be able to present them to a board of directors who will have a final say, and what that iterative process looks like. This process can be very manual. It can take a lot of time, especially if you are trying to review the information through spreadsheets and or emails. Having people in person being able to make decisions, it can just take up a lot of time, and that 6 to 8 month journey can be very arduous. And with Microsoft's direction and partners here like Avantiico, this type of scenario can eventually become a thing of the past. And I say that because right now we are on a journey to reduce risk, reduce the cost overruns that can come with this process, and also eliminate rework, so that way you can recognize revenue and efficiency when it comes to using some of the AI and Copilot functions that are built within the system going forward. And so that's what I want to talk about. I want to focus on is being able to move from a scenario like this, or whatever that scenario may be that you deal with in your organization, and being able to leverage some of the standard capabilities that come with the future of D365 finance and operations. So let's talk about what's in our current toolbox today when it comes to D365 finance, automation, and AI. If you've been in any of my presentations before, you know that I have covered a couple of these functions when it comes to being able to automate your business processes. And these functions have a form of AI assistance built within them. When you think about the OCR and vendor invoice automation functionality, where the system is able to take a vendor invoice that is sent to you by your vendor, ingest that into the system, read the data, and then create a vendor invoice in your system, is a component of AI, because the system is taking an action on your behalf. There are some pieces that still require manual intervention, and that's part of what is the current standard finance automation functionality today. We also have the capability of using process collections automation, or collections process automation, within D365 as well. And this is another component where you have the ability, or your system that is, has the ability to create notifications and collection letters on your behalf to send to your client, so that way you can reduce your AR and increase your cash flow. And again, the last piece that I've also presented on in the past is automated bank reconciliation, where you want to be able to have some form of communication with your bank to automatically bring in your bank statements, have your system configured so that you can have matches to your current transactions, as well as those transactions that come in your bank statement. Again, all these components are at your fingertips today. And again, they have a piece of AI functionality to them, but still requiring some manual intervention on behalf of the user. Now, how is Microsoft taking us on this journey to bridge the gap between what we're doing in terms of finance automation and moving more towards more agentic and automated AI capabilities that can be more proactive for us? And the first thing we notice here is, if you've, obviously done some research, or if you've heard just through the grapevine, the Copilot functionality that's built into Microsoft 365 tools like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, where you can, talk to the Copilot so that it can give you guidance and direction, whether that's creating PowerPoint slides or enhancing your email and so on. And then built within D365, if you have the appropriate licensing, then you can see that Microsoft, the Copilot sidecar here within D365, has that bit of automation for you. Using sources like Microsoft Learn and Bing Search, D365 now has that capability to be able to give you guidance directly in the system, where now it can tell you how to do things based on information that is part of the Microsoft knowledge source. But it doesn't stop there. Microsoft has now taken us to a point where we have some AI capabilities built within our standard workspaces. A workspace like the confirm purchase orders with the confirmed purchase orders with changes workspace that allows a user to see summarized information. So now you don't need to necessarily go into the system to go dig up information on your purchase orders to see where they are. The system is doing that for you. And those are the AI components that are currently in D365 today and that you can still leverage. The latest piece of information that Microsoft has released in the last few months here, or within the last year, is the account reconciliation agent. And this is now talking about agents and actually taking action and doing things on your behalf. So in this case, we have the account reconciliation agent as built directly into D365, where it can automatically reconcile transactions and identify exceptions where there's mismatches between your ledger and your subledger. So now we've gone from a journey of having some automation that requires configuration, some agentic capabilities that is able to give you information at a summary level, where now you can be proactive in your research and be proactive in your actions to take action against a transaction or do some type of work, to where now with the account reconciliation agent, the system has the ability to do your reconciliation or reconcile transactions on your behalf, identify mismatches within your ledger and your subledger, and allow you to close your books and close your year so much faster without necessarily adding in more man hours or person hours in order to get some of these things done. And that's where this is now taking us to the next level of agentic AI and where we want to be able to get to today. And this is just a screenshot showing you exactly how those exceptions and those discrepancies within your account reconciliation agent are identified and worked through, because you have different functions and capabilities that you can do in here. But the next step that I want to talk about is the model context protocol. And this is the piece of Microsoft where now things are starting to come together and we're able to work with the Copilot Studio tools and all the different tools that we have to have agentic AI working on our behalf. So now it's not just a matter of we have access to it within the system and it can summarize information, or it can tell us about our data, but it can actually work on our behalf while we can be more efficient in working on other areas. So the model context protocol is a function within D365, but also within Copilot Studio that allows you to use these apps that you see here and work in conjunction with Copilot Studio. So from D365 Finance and Operations, Azure, Power Automate and Automate workflows, as well as Power Apps can now come together, harnessing the power of Copilot Studio to be able to leverage those business processes that you need to be done, but you need them to be done without so much hands-on and having the system create that data for you. So what this allows you to do is it allows you to now be able to work more efficiently, being able to get more things done, while at the same time having a system that is able to act on your behalf. And that's what I want to demonstrate here for these next 5 or 10 minutes, is to talk about or to show you what this actually looks like in action when it comes to leveraging the model context protocol within your system. So just give me one moment here. I'm going to pull up my D365 environment. So here I have it. Oh, let's restart my session. So here I have my D365 environment. One of the things that we're going to leverage is we're going to leverage the Microsoft Context Protocol to actually show you how D365 now is able to create transactional data in the system. So now it's not just a matter of setting up batch jobs to be able to go get things. It's actually a matter of using natural language to tell the system what to do. And that's done here in Copilot Studio. So I have my Copilot Studio, I've got it connected to my environment, and I have my D365 Model Context Protocol agent connected to this environment. And just like, if you're familiar with using any of the current AI functions such as ChatGPT or Claude AI, or even Copilot within Microsoft Word and Excel, you can now talk to the MCP and have it work on your behalf to be able to create data for you within the system. So here, as you can see, I've got it all configured. And of course, there is some background configuration that needs to happen. And that's where those other apps come into play. whether you're talking about having Power Apps and Power Automate. These things are at your fingertips in standard D365 as we speak. So for example, here we see it saying, hello, what can I do for you today? How can I help? Well, one of the things that I'm going to ask it to do is I'm going to ask it to create some customer, uh, 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 have it create a vendor for me in my system. So what I would say here is in company USMF, create a new vendor. We'll call this vendor mini blinds to go. And I want to make this vendor part of vendor group 20 or whatever your vendor groups, right? We want to be able to give it, the required configurations as needed. And I just want to say with any address in Los Angeles, California, because that's where I'm from. And the vendor should have net 30 payment terms with the electronic payment method. So I'm not necessarily talking to Microsoft Context Protocol in exact D365 vernacular. So even just having something as simple as payment method versus method of payment, which is a term within the user interface, it can still understand what you're trying to ask it to do. And that's part of the large language model that this leverages within the system. So as you can see, if I go back into D365, for example, and just go to my all vendors list page, I'll show you right now that let's go to my standard view. And you can see I don't have a vendor in here called mini blinds to go. And if I put this in alphabetical order, no vendor there. So what we want the system to be able to do is we want it to be able to create it for us on our behalf. And so this is the part where now the system is working for you in terms of actually creating data and now becoming a true AI assistant, is that it's being able to tell me exactly what I've asked it to do, and it's going to help me create that vendor. And this is part of how we become more efficient, how we can do more work with less, without necessarily adding headcount. And so how you can see here, it's communicating. So now in real time, if I'm working on multiple things and I need to multitask because people are multitasking all the time, we need to be able to do certain things while also being able to get a lot of work done. And yeah, maybe you won't be necessarily, maybe the scenario is not necessarily you creating a one-off vendor. Maybe you need to upload a file to be able to create those vendors. And that's what you can see here, right? Is you have the ability to attach a document and actually upload data into the system to have it created for you on your behalf while you go and work on something else, like generating reports, having your meetings with your colleagues, and so on. So this stuff works in the background. And as you can see, it's talking through all the different things that it's doing. It's able to create the payment method, it's able to create the addresses, and so on. It even has the ability to contextualize when things aren't working right or when it gets error messages, as you can see in here. So it's providing a vendor account number, is looking at the list, and it's going through this process and being able to generate data for you. And that's the key point here, is that between all the different functions and the standard automation capabilities that we have just out of box, Microsoft has taken things a step further when it comes to the model context protocol, and that it's able to work on your behalf to make you more efficient. And what I like here is that it's able to kind of go through and search on different areas. And here in the case where it's looking for some bit of information, it's looking through the documentation. So even though it ran into errors and it got blocked a couple of times, the system is still able to process through it. It's able to look through and let you know where it's found the sources. And now with that information, it's given us a summary where it has successfully created the new vendor in my company with its account number and all the information that I've requested. So if you had it or needed more information, then you would be able to do that accordingly, right? And then it also lets you know where issues may have arose, right? In the sense of the address here. And I wasn't anticipating this. I just gave it any address and wanted it to make it up. It's worked in some previous samples that I had did, but it didn't work in this one. But it at least gives you that information. And that's what makes the agent, the AI assistant so powerful, is that it's able to create that information for you, but also give you context as to when things are missing or when they go wrong. And now you can see, here's my new vendor created on the spot with, while I'm talking to you guys giving a presentation, MCP is working on my behalf. So let's take it a step further, because we are talking about finance and we would like to know, well, what else can it do? How powerful is this? So what I want to do is I want to create some vendor invoices. So taking it a step further from not just our OCR that receives, oh, go ahead, Colin, I'm sorry.
There's a quick question in the chat. Just want
Sure.
to throw it to you. Sophia said, "Hi, can you attach a vendor invoice and ask to create the vendor based on the info on the invoice?"
That's a great question, and that's a scenario that I can definitely explore. I wouldn't be surprised if it could, to be honest with you. I tested being able to upload vendors through being able to upload vendors. I'm pretty sure that if we were able to upload a vendor invoice document, such as like a PDF, I assume, um, that it would be able to read that and see, because it has that capability. When I uploaded a Excel spreadsheet to create a couple of customers, it read the fact that I had some headers, and that it read the data that was in there. Now, one of the things that we would have to be mindful of when it comes to uploading a PDF directly in the MCP is, where does it recognize the fields, right? That's part of the OCR capability right now, is that you basically train your OCR tool in your Power App to be able to read, where's the vendor name, where's the vendor account, where is the invoice number identified. So those are the things that we would have to explore. But that's really just a matter of testing and recognizing the out-of-box functionality. Does that
Awesome.
answer your question, Sophia?
I think I saw a thumbs up. Yeah.
Awesome, we'll take it. Okay, so let's take another example, right? Like I said, let's go a little further here and do something a little more hardcore, at least, for demonstration purposes. So what I'm going to do here is what I want to do is I want to create some vendor invoices. So in this case, for example, I don't have any pending vendor invoices in my company right now, but I do have a number of purchase orders. And if I look at my purchase order status, I have a number of purchase orders that are already received. So what I want my system to do, and again, talking to it without necessarily going through and having all of the different menu items and all of the different forms memorized in D365, I just want to tell it something simple. So I'm just going to take this example here and say, in company USMF. And as you notice, I am identifying the company. So you do have to give it some base information. So it's not trying to create vendors in, the data company, DAT company, or, it's telling it where it needs to go. So there is some, there are some best practices and tips and tactics in terms of communicating with your agent. And that goes for Copilot chat and prompts and so on. But what I like here, particularly in the MCP, is that it's more natural language. You can talk to it as if you're talking to a person. And that's something that we've kind of really only seen in things like ChatGPT and some of those more advanced agents that you have access to online for a fee or for free. So here in company USMF, I want you to create pending vendor invoices for all that have a purchase order status of received. And vendors, just have this typed on the other side, vendors with multiple orders So what I'm trying to do here, right, is I'm trying to have the system create some pending vendor invoices for all of my purchase orders that are in a received purchase order status. But I also wanted to take a step further, right? Is I wanted to combine those vendors that have multiple orders and basically use the consolidate function that's built within D365. And I wanted to combine them into a single invoice for those particular purchase orders. And so that's somewhat of a tall ask when you talk about having an agentic, some agentic capabilities work on your behalf, because just haven't had that before when it comes to D365. So I'll just prompt it and send that off. And now we'll start to see the MCP work on our behalf. So again, me as the user wants to find the USMF company, find all purchase orders with received, and let the agent start working. And so here you can see he's found this pending vendor invoices menu and needs to open it up. So basically, everything that you can do by hand manually within the system, the MCP is now giving you the capability to be able to tell the system what to do in order for you to be able to do it. Is anyone thinking of any particular scenarios that they may have in place that could quantify or that would be substantial for this, as Sophia had mentioned, right? Being able to attach a vendor invoice. What other scenarios can you guys think of that could potentially be of value to you in using this tool? One of the things that comes to mind for me, for example, is in the budgeting module, for example, is budget planning, right? There's a lot of different configurations that need to go into place, and there's multiple steps that need to happen to be able to do the budget plan process in D365. And I'm already thinking about, okay, how can I automate that process? How can I make that more agentic AI friendly, so that way something can work on my behalf? So those are the kind of things that we need to continually think about here.
We've got another question in the chat, Brandon. Andrea asks, does this vendor invoice creation work well on thousands of records, or can it start being slow, and or does it have any bottlenecks?
So I have yet to test it on that many records, but I don't see why it couldn't be something that would be included in our testing process when, this kind of requirement comes to fruition. So as you can see here, the system is working and it's going through all those different steps. I imagine that that's something that we would eventually end up having to test out, is the performance that happens when you have thousands of records, right? For those companies that have those kinds of orders, this is something that we would just need to identify and note as a as a requirement, and being able to test that and put that in our list of things that we can accomplish.
Awesome. And then another question from Randy. Could you give a spreadsheet with vendor accounts, dates, invoice numbers, procurement categories, etc., and let it create invoices?
I would believe so. That's what I would test next. Actually, is being able to put those vendor account numbers, those dates and invoice numbers with those categories, because again, that information lives in the system. Um, that information lives in the system, so we should be able to pull that information out of there. And these are great questions, and these are all the kinds of scenarios that we need to be able to put our system through to make sure that it can do the kinds of things that a business needs to do. But like I said before, when I was doing some testing, I tested creating a customer transactions, just feeding it the spreadsheet itself, and it being able to create those customers based on the headings that I gave it. I know it was able to, create that data. So I wouldn't be surprised, and I would expect it to be able to do the same thing when it comes to vendor data like this.
And then just one last question while we're watching from Travis. I'm assuming we can point it to exposed data entities like we can in data management.
Yes, I would assume so as well, because again, this ties in directly into your D365 environment. As you can see here, it's basically a remote, it basically is a remote way to go in and access your data. So again, being able to have those exposed data entities and pull information is exactly what we're expecting this functionality to be able to do.
Fantastic. All right, and
All
that is
right.
all the questions in the chat for now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so as we can see here, it's still kind of working through my request. It's very interesting that it's come across this, but let's see here. Hmm. So as you can see here, what we're having to do is it's actually thinking about being able to use the consolidate function, because I told it to combine vendor invoices that have their orders combined into a single invoice. So it's trying to use that consolidate function and being able to generate those invoices that way. So the system is having to think about it a little further, which I wasn't quite anticipating based on the example that I had given it before, but those are the kind of things that happen. So just again, something that requires just a little further testing when it comes to being able to generate these invoices based on the data that's built within the system. So we'll give it another minute or so to see if it starts making and creating those invoices. And then if not, if it runs into an error, then I'll potentially try another way, or we'll just continue to move on. Business Central Japanese. Okay. Interesting. Let's see if we can prompt it another way here. Let's say if we use the purchase orders, I know that there's a form, purchase orders received, not invoiced form, to find the invoices and generate, to find the purchase orders and generate the invoices. Sorry, y'all. Purchase orders. Sometimes these things happen during a live demonstration, but that's okay. And generate the invoices. I'll see what it says here. And we'll just do that. Okay.
There is another question in the chat. Have we added the D365 ERP MCP as a tool in this agent, or have we also included any additional knowledge sources?
So no additional knowledge sources have been added for right now, just because one of the things I wanted to test is, outside of Microsoft Learn, that's what you can see here. Microsoft Learn is the one knowledge source that's in here. And of course, you have the D365 ERP MCP tool that is added into here. And that's what I mean by the standard function that this is using. So there's not really a whole lot else that has been configured just in this base tool. But that's not to say that you can't have those additional knowledge sources, whether they be specific websites, your SharePoint site, and so on. So there's a lot of configuration, a lot of knowledge sources and tools that can be added to this functionality to be able to make this happen. So yes, there's additional functionality within the MCP that will allow you to make it even more robust and give you more specific results when it comes to how the information gets brought into the MCP.
Roger that.
Okay. All right, so we'll see. So I had to give it a little direction. It was going through, and as you can see, it was doing a lot of searching and, found the pending vendor invoice creation, but ran into some issues, which again, sometimes that happens, particularly in, like I said, a live demonstration where you kind of prep and you prepare some data and it doesn't quite work the way you expect it to work. But at the same time, that's going to be part of the process when it comes to using the agentic AI functionality. You're very welcome, by the way, Poonam, is that this is all part of this new functionality that is happening for us, as we work through these new functions, right? The MCP literally just came out, I think, with the last version of 46, and I'm pretty sure there's going to be in some enhancements by the time 47 and 48 version roll around. And that's not to say that it's going to be perfect the first time out, But the good thing is that we know that the functionality is there. We know that we can put some stuff together and that the system can work on our behalf. A lot of the things that people have been asking for a very long time. And it's been slowly getting there based on the steps that I had talked about in the previous scenario, to where it is now, as you can see, it's able to work on our behalf. And while, in terms of this demonstration and being able to have it work instantly, no, it wasn't perfect, but at the same time, we're able to see that the system can work on our behalf, which I think is, um, you know, is invaluable when it comes to managing your ERP and getting to a point where you have a lot of the scenarios that the folks in the chat have asked about, being able to upload volumes of data, being able to have the system extract external information, and having it being able to read, copy, or read images and produce transactional information. So that's what we're working toward here. So we'll give it another minute because we, have full time, but I want to see, if we're able to get the final purchase invoices put together here before we move on to the next step. All right. It's going to set the included checkbox to include purchase orders. All right. So now we have a couple of purchase orders from the vendor US 105 are now included, and all the lines from the PO are also automatically included. So ideally, it's going to create these additional invoices and we'll be good to go once this completes. All right, so one or more does not have a corresponding product receipt, so the invoice line was not created, and that's okay. So with that being said, like I said, I know that we've got some time. We've got a little bit of time here, but I don't want to keep everyone too long when this is working on our behalf. We have a pending invoice. Okay, good. Okay, let me go back to the presentation now. Like I said, yeah, I wish that it had been a little smoother and worked a little quicker. It had the other day when I was preparing it, and something about my setup just didn't quite work out right. But let me continue to move on. So now in talking about how do we adopt a lot of this stuff going forward? So again, being able to leverage the model context protocol as a new AI assistant is going to be key when it comes to moving forward in 2026 with going beyond just the Copilot and being able to have it tell you where information is. So instead of having to just navigate the system on your own, which is fantastic when it comes to staying within the system to find information, but having it actually create data based on the inputs that you give it directly from the MCP is going to be crucial for the day-to-day business activities that your companies will have in the future. And then basically being able to leverage the standardized automation functions that are within D365. So some of those, like I mentioned before, with OCR, invoice automation, process collections, bank reconciliation automation, those are the kind of things that within D365 you can use to leverage, coupled with the model context protocol. So that way you do have the ability to create transactional data and master data in the system. Like I showed you, being able to create the vendor, obviously trying to create the vendor invoice. Hopefully by the time we come to the end here, after a few announcements by Colin, I'll at least be able to show you a screenshot of those new invoices that have been created. So with that being said, we have a next step slide that I'm going to pass over to Colin so he can talk about some of the features and functions that we have in store for the upcoming months.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Brandon. Thank you for the demonstration. Yeah, so everything we covered today, the automation modules and the MCP-enabled AI capabilities are part of the continued one-version evolution of D365 Finance. The opportunity is powerful, but only if updates are planned intentionally. So depending on where you are, there's three ways that we can support you. The first for most teams, and the best next step is a personalized 2026 D365 service update roadmap session. In this engagement, we align Microsoft's release schedule to your business calendar, review your lifecycle services configuration, verify update compliance, and ultimately help you avoid conflicts with month-end, year-end, or peak operational seasons. You'll receive a clear visual 2026 update roadmap that you can share internally to plan testing in advance and avoid risky auto updates. And then secondly, if you're ready to activate specific automation modules like IP automation or AP automation collections or reconciliation, we deliver those through our finance automation accelerators, which are designed for fast, predictable implementation. And thirdly, if your team is still manually keying, reconciling, or consolidating data across multiple entities, AMCS Lite is a free module that we built that runs directly inside of D365 Finance to simplify multi-entity accounting, reduce manual effort, and help you close faster with greater confidence in your numbers. If that sounds familiar, I highly recommend joining next week's AMCS Lite session. You can also download it for free anytime from our website. Just go to Avantiico Solutions, and then you'll find it under AMCS Lite. For most organizations thinking about 2026 planning, automation and AI adoption, and update risk management, I recommend starting with the road mapping session. I'll drop a link for that in the chat now. And we'll also be sending out a follow-up email following this session's recording that'll have links to the road mapping session, the finance automation accelerators, and AMCS Lite as well, so you can review those and share internally. And lastly, if you have any questions about what path makes the most sense for your environment, feel free to reply to that email that'll get sent out with the recording, or you could just reach out to us directly. We'll have both of our emails in the chat as well. And yeah, that's just about it for me on the update side. Wanted to take the last couple minutes we have here for an open Q&A session. If there's any lingering questions anyone has, feel free to drop them in the chat. We got a Q&A as well, or you could turn your mic on and talk with us directly. If there's no immediate questions, I guess I have one for you, Brandon.
Yeah.
Being a finance professional yourself, what mundane task are you most excited about the MCP agent being able to take off your shoulders?
Well, being able to probably manage and update vendor invoices. You know, one of the areas that I specialize in, not just I specialize in the budget planning and banking functions, but also just being able to work with invoicing. That's why I wanted to kind of focus on this example, because invoicing in terms of standard D365, even before OCR, was a very manual process, whether that was creating invoice journals or in this case creating pending vendor invoices. So being able to have the system not just create invoices automatically using OCR, but being able to tell it to create invoices, to me is a game changer. And I even like the suggestion earlier where someone asked, can we upload a spreadsheet with the invoices and have it created from there? I promise you, I'm going to be testing that, not today, the rest sometime this week, to see, can it actually do it? Because if you can do that, even if you don't have the OCR capabilities, maybe your vendors don't send you invoices in the right format via PDF, being able to at least organize them in a spreadsheet and then upload them with the click of a button is pretty fantastic to me. So that's one of the things that I would definitely want to make sure that I know kind of like forwards and backwards, is what are all the functions that it can do with an invoice.
Yeah, less clicks definitely equals more happy. I think we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
Question from Travis. He's asking if this agent is a proprietary agent that we developed.
No. So this is standard D365. This is standard Copilot Studio. Obviously I have, the licenses, which someone in our company makes sure that I have, so I can demonstrate this kind of stuff. But it's all, standard D365, like I showed you earlier, in terms of knowledge and tools. This is just it was available. We uploaded it. It's been configured and connected to our environment through our Power Platform Admin Center. I have the appropriate security rights in Power Platform Admin Center to be like agent maker or whatever the security role is, and being able to do this. That's not to say that you can't enhance them, and that's one of the things that we're also trying to move forward to, is being able to leverage how can we make things even more easier, less user interjection when it comes to using leveraging Power Apps, Power Automate workflows, and D365 to build those out in Copilot Studio to make what are called custom agents, right? So this is just a standard MCP tool that is being used to pull this information in, but that's not to say that you can't have custom agents.
Got it. Thank you for that. Another question from Charles. Would you recommend using your own agent connected to MCP as opposed to the Copilot for Finance and Operations agent?
That's a good question, Charles, because I'm still testing and trying to figure out the value in terms of what does the Copilot for Finance and Operations agent do versus the MCP agent, and as you noted, like your own agent connected to that. Because the Copilot for Finance and Operations agent, I realized, is that and you're welcome, Travis, is that it does a lot of the same stuff that the Copilot sidecar does, right? Where it just kind of tells you this is how you would do something versus actually doing it for you. And so that's where, I'm kind of on the fence right now, because I got to explore a little bit more when it comes to the Copilot for Finance and Operations agent. It seems like it's really just the exact same thing that the Copilot sidecar does. So basically, when I see this, how can I connect, an agent to do a little bit more on my behalf? So we don't have any custom agents just yet. We're working on a couple of them, and well, we do have one, but yeah, it's still to be determined, to be honest.
It's a secret agent, you're saying?
Yeah. And just so you guys all know, so we weren't staring at a screen, talk and work, it looks like it did create some pending vendor invoices. Let me just go in here before we close things out. And here you can now see it created them. It didn't consolidate them. So that's a little bit of a flaw there. So I'll have to look at my prompt and see a better way to prompt my agent to do a better job of consolidating the invoices. I'm pretty sure it was something, and usually this case, it's typically probably human error when it came to this, because like I said, it did it yesterday and it did it great, but it didn't today. And but that's not to say that it just wasn't part of my verbiage, that I may have given it the wrong prompt compared to what I said yesterday. Any other questions? All right. Well, I thank you all so much for your time. I appreciate you guys coming on and listening to our webinar here about D365 Finance Automation and some of the capabilities that agentic AI is going to bring to us. Please reach out if you have any questions or you have any business needs. As Colin noted, there's a lot of different events coming up that we're going to be hosting, and I would love the opportunity to present more to you guys when you have a chance to show up. So appreciate your time, appreciate your patience and understanding when things don't go as smoothly as we expect. And thank you again for all of your questions and all your input, and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you so much, everybody.